Lana glanced at the door when she heard the toilet flushing in the bathroom. Better hurry up, guys. Luna's time is almost done with the can. She then fumbled around towards the closed door. Let's put it this way, Luann. All of us love you as a sister, despite the crazy stunts you pulled on us every April Fool's Day. The others nodded at Lincoln's words. But we think this is something you should really should take our advice on. Luna then swore more times than she normally would just because she was having that problem restringing her acts. Just imagine what she'd do if you pulled a tiny prank on her. The boy folded his arms. Well, just don't see it ending well for you. Luann gave a small sign of irritation. I get that, but she then wrapped her fingers around her arm. Can you guys at least trust me on this? I've seen Luna when she's on her period before, and she's handled that smoothly. Whenever she could throw at me, I could dish right back. The 15-year-old paused as everyone heard the door swing open. The faint sound of the music being heard alongside of footfalls before another door was being shut. I appreciate your worries, but I got this, okay? Luann then got up from her bed and exited out of the room, making sure that the closed door was behind her. The remaining siblings looked among themselves, still having reservations about Luann jumping to the pits of fire. So sis, what are the chances of Luann pranking and blowing up in her face? Asked the resident athlete. Based on my observations, I say, Lisa tapped her chin and thought, a 95% chance Luann will do something to earn herself a physical altercation. Lucy then gave a low hum. Sigh. I guess I'll start planning her funeral. Lincoln gave a half-added stare. No one is planning any funerals. Look, let's just be ready to separate them if it comes to shove. Sound good? The sound of the rush air leaving an object filled the room. Everyone looked at Lenny, who slowly sank to the floor as the suit deflated. The fork had along with her and the side. Opened the container sacotage. Her small feet tear noticeably lipped around the poncho mask where the air continued to rush out. I got hungry and accidentally poked a hole in it. The blonde then smiled nervously. The rest of the night dragged in with the air of tension coursing through the next house. Aside from the general worry of April Fool's Day, the siblings' sons Luann and Luna were more concerned about what kind of the two performers might get into the next morning, especially since Luann always liked to start her shenanigans early on her favorite holiday. Lincoln then pulled out several rows of nails from the door, only leaving a few boards up to be easily removed. Couldn't even sleep with her body armor, while Lucy stayed in her casket. She originally planned to sleep for the spacious vent system, but with her suit no longer usable, Lenny then slept in her bed, eventually becoming engrossed with a shopping dream. The twins, however, didn't want to risk taking off their bubble wrap protection, in case of things went smoothly for their comedic sibling. If April Fool's Day taught them anything, that was that Luann was practically an escape artist, and could definitely hide from them at the wrath of her siblings, once she had fun at all. Like most of her older siblings, Lisa thought it would be best to forego camping in her bunker. In the event of aid then needed, Lily just slept through the night, like a baby she was, forgetting about whatever concerns that she had in favor of napping. Shortly before turning in for the night, Luann then looked at the time to set up the prank and shared a room. She had to make sure Luna was still into her sleep before she could get to work. Fortunately for her, Luna still had the habit of sleeping with her music blasting in her headphones. Luann ended up dropping a few items that she surely woke her up, if it weren't for the noise pollution. After putting everything into place, the comedian set her alarm to her phone to vibrate, as she wanted to be wide awake before Luna managed to get up. Since it was Sunday, Luann estimated she'd be awake up around 8. With a devious grin on her face, the comedian dozed off as much to get as many Z's as possible. Gotta be well rested for her big performance, after all. Unbeknownst to her, Luann would usually get the fruits of her own work up close and personal. Luna woke up with a groggly moan before giving a low hiss of pain. She wished that high heaven and the Sandman would send her back to sleep, but like the average human, she was awoke due to a building pressure that held in her bladder and needed to be emptied. However, she would normally be an annoying sensation compared with the constant aching of her lower region. Luna then groaned as her eyes creaked open, with a slight grunt escaping her as the lids fell a little sticky. Lifting her sheets a tad bit, The musician could make out a small spot of blood on the fabric of her panties. Ah, fucking hell, Luna then muttered to herself before aching back, feeling a bit of relief as the individual bones pop. Have to pop another in. She then glanced down at the clock of the nightstand, and the sun's just getting up. Giving another yawn, Luna removed her headphones before switching them off. She gave a few silent grunts of pain as her legs moved, a small burning sensation being on the inner parts of her thighs. Climbing down from the bunk's ladder, Luna gave a zombie-like groan as she shifted her way to the door. The brunette noticed that the door was cracked open ever so slightly, a short memory flashing through her mind, like she had been shut for the door. Before heading to bed the previous night, she figured that Luann must have thought that she closed it but didn't check. Another aching pain ran through her core, with the musician bringing her hand up to her stomach, as if to soothe the area. The sooner she could reach the bathroom, the better, especially since it sounded like no one else was up. Unfortunately, in her tired state, Luna failed to take notice this alone skating the shoe, placed in every directly of her path. Especially shuffled soon became frantic and balancing act, as Luna suddenly found herself rocketing towards the door. She let out a yelp as she momentarily felt herself lose control of her bladder before she slammed her face into the frame. She could have sworn it was enough to wake up the entire house. The force of the impact caused her door to slam shut, and Luna stumbling back a few feet before falling on her rear. Just before she could get her bearings, her vision was darkened and something metallic and wet fell on her head. Luna let out a shriek as she found herself drenched in cold water. Feeling the objective in her hand, she deduced it was a bucket. While you could really said you really paled it, came a lame pun that Luna recognized from anywhere. Luann, the musician spoke through gritted teeth. The comedian came out of the closet holding the camera with constantly flashing red light. Don't be such a hothead. I thought a dunk would have cooled you off. Luann laughed at herself. Luna then shifted now her empty bucket off her head, showing a face that developed around the red hue around her forehead. You won't be laughing at all once I'm done with you. She then threw directly at the comedian's face. Luann ducked under and becoming a projectile, temporarily glancing back with it, bouncing off the wall before turning it back to her arranged sister. Luna then stopped towards Luann, her knuckles immediately white as she breathed in the hot air through her nose. Normally Luann might have lost her nerve, but it wasn't what it was drawing her attention. Given a low smirk, it looks like someone needs to borrow some diapers from Lily. What are you going on about? Luna replied repeatedly, before noticing that her mother region felt uncomfortably wet and warm. To come to think of it, Luna didn't even realize that she felt she needed to use the bathroom anymore. Glancing down, the musician's cheeks became bright red upon realizing she emptied her bladder directly onto her now soaked panties. Oh, don't be feel bad, sis. I'll get some powder and a big diaper to fix you up. Luann had joked before she broke into a hysterical laughing fit. She had to hold her sides in to avoid doubling over. Luna visibly began to shake in pure rage and poured into the bloodstream, pupils beginning to thin, whitened out, and her fingers inched to be clamped around her roommate's neck. Nothing would pacify them, the musician, more than whipping out the dumb smirk off the idiot's sister's face, putting into the end, into her stupid puns, insistent laughter. As her teeth began to grind together, Luna looked frantically around the room to find something to chuck at her sister. Eyes landed on the closest object to her, which happened to be her drum set. Stomping over to the kit, Luna ripped the massive bass drum out of its cradle and heaved over her head. Taking an aim at Luann's face, Luna then launched it such ferocity that the drum might as well have been a baseball. Luann opened her eyes just in time to see the drum, a few seconds before impacting her face. The comedian could only stand in shock right before her nose took a brunt of the impact. Luann gave a shrill scream as she was knocked back to the floor, her nose shooting an endless amount of pain, signals to her brain covering the facial damage with her hands. Luann could feel the thick, slow-moving liquid steep down her fingers, noticing how deformed her nose was. Removing the shaky hand, Luann saw it was slick with her own blood. I told you not to do it, Luann! Luann's vision was focused off and onto Luna, who stood over there with a periodized guitar gripped tightly on one hand, and it was like she was staring at death itself with Kalia's cold gaze that the musician was giving her. I fucking told you what would happen, but did you ever think to listen to your once in your bloody life? Before Luann could answer, she watched in horror as her sister raised her guitar. The comedian immediately covered her face with her arms as Luna brought the axe down, searing a hot pain shooting through Luann's bones as Luann assaulted her like she was on stage during those performances. The 15-year-old gave a cry of agony and pain as it became too much bear, and after the swift swing, crack. Luann could have swore that Luna had finally succeeded in breaking her arms, but in the slightest movement, they were one to be in peace. Taking the risk and uncovering her face, the comedian found that the neck of Luna's guitar had broken into two. The musician stared at her wrecked baby for at least a few seconds before returning to that chilling glare at her roommate. Apparently, whacking her a couple of instruments wasn't enough to stay Luna as she tossed the broken guitar to the side before pouncing on her sister. No, no, please, I'm sorry! Luann tried to push her off, but Luna had a good position of managing to straddle her stomach. Get off of me! Luna ignored her sister's pleas as sawdust had restrained from her arms. After a couple of seconds of struggling, Luna finally secured both of Luann's wrists in one hand, held them up behind Luann's head, readying for another jab in her face. Luna, wait! Luann pleaded a grin. I said I'm sorry. I'm sorry! Ah! The comedian was then cut off with the first connected with one of the eyes. The younger girl's cries were cried off when Luna connected another to her cheek, only to cry out again with another slammed onto her already broken nose. Fortunately, Luna's grip on her wrist slacked enough to allow Luann to break free and block her face once again. Luna continued to hammer at her sister as much as rage poured out, with Luann crying for the nightmare to be over. As if a higher power answered her prayers, someone grabbed Luna's wrists from behind her and readied for another punch. Luna, stop it! Lenny ordered, a firm grasp on the rocker's arm. Her sleep mask had been settled just above her eyes, and when she finally gave a normal concern about her hair being a mess, that was when the furthest thing was from her mind right now. Luna twisted her head around and glared her, meaning Lenny's. Get off of me, brah! She then tugged her arm back, but Lenny clamped down her with a vice grip. No, you're not until you get off of her. Lenny pointed towards Luann, who uncovered her face just enough to see bruises forming under her arms and face. I said let go! Luna tugged again, nearly bringing Lenny down with her. The blonde was caught by surprise, but she held her ground. She tried to wrestle and in range with the brunette of her sister. Luna decided that she couldn't really fight Lenny in her current position, and twisted her body until she was able to stand up. Luann wheezed and held her gut due to the aching knee to her stomach. The comedian could only watch as Luna tried to land a hit on Lenny, and the fashionist trying to attempt to subdue her. Several pairs of footsteps were heard from the hallway. No doubt the other siblings and the amount of noise generated would have woken up the whole neighborhood. Seconds after the door swung open, Luna managed to be free from one of the fists before clocking Lenny right on her temple. Several gasps was heard as Lenny's vision temporarily flashed to white. She then fell on the floor as Heap, giving a loud moan as she felt her head was spinning. Most of the other older siblings were too afraid to move after seeing the amount of carnage Luna had dealt to Luann. Witnessing Lenny getting punched out was nothing that they feared they may be next on their musical siblings' shits list. However, one more angry than afraid, another seeing the bruises marrying Luann's body, seeing no apparent damage on Luann despite appearing under damp. Lynn had even mind to jump onto her to see how well as the bullish 16-year-old could flare up with the advisory that actually puts up with a fight. A quick glance amongst the group gave Lynn a clear picture of what the fear and worry her brother and sisters felt. But they were starting to think, no, fuck that. There was no way in hell that Lynn was going to let Luna lay a finger on any of them. Moving towards the front, she wanted to be a shield between them and her crazy sister, in case if Luna tried to do something. However, the second she saw Lenny hit the floor, All bets were off. Before anyone could react, Lynn dashed from the group and planted both fists onto her sister's gut, knocking the musician to the floor with the athlete on top. Lynn growled as she started landing blows on Luna's face, which only lasted a few more seconds before Luna managed to land a solid right hook. The two tumbled to the door as they fought to gain an advantage, soon becoming the little fists of feet flying for a direction. The rest debated or whether or not they should help Lynn, given how Lori would have had trouble managing her athletic sister. Everyone soon figured that Luna would soonly have her hands tied. Sidestepping the brawl, Lincoln approached Luann, who had managed to sit up in order to get a better grasp at the situation. He was a little repulsive by her appearance. One of her eyes was nearly shut, and there was a cut on her nose. Small traces of blood were leaving her nostrils. That would explain why she's breathing through her mouth right now. "You okay, Luann?" the boy asked as he knelt to her. The comedian shook her head. "No," came her meek reply as more tears started to leave her eyes. The other girls helped Lenny into a sitting position, the blonde holding her head where Luna decked her. In all the chaos, Lincoln began to wonder where the heck were their parents. The siblings heard all this noise. The sound from all the thumping and vibrations of the floor surely would have. "What the hell is going on here?" came a masculine voice that emboiled with the authority. All the kids, minus Luna and Lynn, all turned to the door to see the two confused and irritated parents. Both of them were still dressed in their bed attire, just like they were upset as the kids were. The rude awakening was so early in the morning that they scanned over their children, taking a note of their worried expressions and the fact that Lenny appeared to be holding her head. Luann was. Both the parents had their mouths agape, seeing the state that their comedian daughter finally turned her attention towards the brawling girls, who apparently hadn't noticed their presence. Rita pushed her husband and marched over at the ensuing fight, and a hard glare etched on her face, and was told that she would be putting an end to this. Lifting her hands, the monarch waited a few seconds before sticking them into the brawl, a little satisfied but not even pleased when she grabbed the back of Lynn and Luna's necks. With the looks of surprise, told the mother they were too engrossed with their fight to pay attention to their surroundings. Lynn Sr. walked over to give him a quick look. With a number of bruises beginning to form on of each other, both parents knew that this had been something serious. Turning back to look around, Farver pointed at Luann, Lincoln, and Lenny. "You three in the living room, especially." He gave a side glance at Lynn and Luna. "You two. Everyone else stay upstairs." The children had followed order without question, uncertain how things would pan out. The younger siblings gave out sorrowful looks at Luann, the one who has been around by Lincoln. She couldn't even walk by herself due to being disoriented from the beating. Her parents would have asked someone to help her regardless if she looked the worst out of everyone in the room. Rita dragged Luna and Lynn out of the room, while still former looking pissed off, for reasons no one could really quite understand, and the ladder of the boring hole was the size of Michigan into the back of the former's head. Since her rage to subside, after everyone left the room, Lynn Sr. looked around to see if there was anything else out of the ordinary. He spotted Luna's broken guitar, which might have cued him to how the fight started, by the large dent on the misplaced bass drum that threw him off. The father let out a sigh and escaped him. "There goes my Sunday," he muttered to himself, bypassing his younger set of children before heading downstairs. And that brings us to now. Mom's fixed her nose before she even got started treating her. Lenny went and got some ice, and Luna and Lynn just kept sending their silent death threats to each other until Dad started talking. Now I do think Luann should have gotten what was coming to her. Lincoln then turned away from the viewer to look at his sisters. "I don't think anyone expected this to happen." "Alright, I'll come back to the second. But if you so much as look at each other, you'll be grounded until your next birthdays," came Lynn Sr.'s voice before he appeared in the dining room. Coming up next to Lincoln. "Luann?" The comedic loud then looked up at her father. "Are you okay?" Luann shifted her gaze onto the floor. "Sort of." "Well, that's just dandy." Lynn Sr. spoke with sarcastic undertone. "Now I'm going to ask one question. Did you prank Luna even before she warned you not to do it?" Luann silently nodded, grasping her hands together as she waited her fate. Lynn Sr. breathed in deep before letting a sigh escape him. Okay, normally I ground you as well, but it looks like you've been punished enough. With that said, the partridge then went back to the living room, seeing that Luna and Lynn were staring in the opposite directions. Lenny had temporarily removed her ice pack as her arm got tired and her head needed to rest uncomfortably cold. Right now that everything's been pieced together, I have one thing to say. Luna, you're grounded for 2 months, although you did warn Luann beforehand. Your response was way out of the line, so no music or concerts or band practice until then. And the first thing you're going to do is apologize to your sister. Luna pierced her lips a bit. But Dad, no buts. March! Lynn Sr. pointed towards the dining room. Luna huffed through her nose before getting up from the couch. As much as she didn't want to, she was already in the frying pan, and she risked jumping into the fire if she refused to listen to her parents. Upon researching the open entrance for separated the two rooms, the musician stopped in her tracks, unsure if she would be even allowed to get any closer, seeing as Luann jumped upon noticing her presence, practically recoiled in fear. Lincoln then turned towards her as well. It didn't turn out to be as giddy as Luann, but Luna could still feel the underlining. Rita then twisted her body around, taking the con swap away from Luann's face. Is there something you'd like to say, young lady? Her voice was firm and then filled with disappointment. Luna then scanned over to her sister again, taking the notes of her bruises and specks of blood, hair strands out of place, her quivering lip, and the fact that she held her hands close to her chest as if the rocketer was about to jump again. For the last time of the morning, the part of Luna's anger started out subsided, and she continued to really looked out to the damage that she had done to her own Keen. Luann then kept giving about her face, was practically begging for her not to come any closer, thinking that her was nothing, but became more a ranged beast. Luna then could also see a bit of guilt sitting just below the crust. Since Luann knew very well none of this would happen if she had ended up listening to her warning. Luna then glanced down at the floor as her neutral facade began to fade away. Guilt was beginning to pool in her chest, and it was the reality of the situation started to become clearer when the sun was poking through the clouds. I'm sorry, the musician spoke quietly, before turning away. The others were a bit unsure if her words were sincere, however. Luna started walking back upstairs, hearing a few pairs of feet rapidly retreating at the top. She figured that her sisters would be there to watch her trial, so it wasn't so upsetting as she was being spied on. It would have given them security, knowing whether or not she was put on lockdown. Lynn Sr. followed up his musical child up the stairs to help move some things to get around. Glancing at the sporting child, Lynn, just make sure you see your mother before you head back up, the partridge ordered before disappearing from the stairs. Junior then gave a light nod before turning to Lenny. How's your head? Feeling a bit better, sort of. Lenny winced a little before reapplying the ice pack to her forehead. Luna's got a serious right look. Lynn then growled a bit, glaring daggers at the floor. She thought I ought to be lucky I didn't get a chance to end her when Mom and Dad showed up. Lenny remained silent for a moment. Do you think Luann's gonna be okay? Lynn gave a shrug. Maybe. She doesn't look too bad, though. I think maybe the rents are gonna have to bunk with you for a bit. Well, I haven't had anyone else in my room since Lori left. The blonde smiled. Maybe we could bond. Do you, Lenny? Lynn lightly tapped the bite marks on her arm, hissing a little as she felt a bit tender. Geez, Luna bites hard. The rest of the day was spent making a few arrangements due to Luna's punishment. As Lynn predicted, Luann would be staying in Lenny's room due to the concern of her well-being, and the comedian wholeheartedly accepted the idea, since she didn't want to be in the same room as Luna. They were concerned as to whether or not the sister fight protocol would be implemented, but the parents dismissed it as a great idea and relieved to the problem, at least at its core. It was being taken care of. Shortly after Luann was treated, Lynn quickly patched her up by her mother and brother, like with her clothes and her own hair, and even some props if she ever needed them. The comedian herself did a little bit of rest for the day, preferring to stay curled up on Laurie's old bed, the only coming out when it was time to eat, because she was curiously incapacitated, and this was probably the time the Loud House didn't have a pranks giving for April Fools. As it was entertaining as the thought of the mood was, it was too depressing for anyone to enjoy it. There was also a subject of potential momentary loss for funny business, since she most likely would be sore for the week. But at least it was least of Luann's concerns. As for Luna, after putting her things in her garage for the range of their punishment, a couple of half of Luann's stains being moved across the hall, the musical blowout was left in mostly plain room to stow her own thoughts. For some who typically doesn't enjoy the quiet moment, the silence was very much welcome. It was then that Luna couldn't even have more distractions, to finally have a chance to let the aftermath of the actions sink in. She sat down on her bed, and her mind was heated with the debate whether or not her actions were justified. One hand, she gave Luann plenty of time to reconsider the attempt at pranking her roommate. The fact she especially pointed out that she was in the middle of her cycle would have been on clue to anyone else that a bit Luna couldn't be as chill as she usually is. Adding to that, Luna couldn't have been a phantom to why Luann even thought of her be able to escape the retribution. Sure, she managed to outwit her siblings at every turn, and this may have been due to that that everyone was still afraid to stop by her, even after the storm passed. But at the last 2 years were a sign of the family as a whole was starting to become less fearful of her extreme pranking, and more focused on finding ways to commemorate or circumvent of the intact revenge. It was only a matter of time before anyone grew sick of the habits and decided to give each other a dish of fist. Sadly, Luna had been the one to just do that. It wasn't like due to elaborate playing either. She felt as the classic water bucket trick, and yes, skating on the floor was a little painful, and Luna did piss herself. But in the other circumstances, Luna could have been mightily annoyed. However, the fact that she woke up already feeling the major aching in her lower area extract from the problem the musician doubt that she'd be pissed as she otherwise was. Luna started to pierce her lips as a few tears enveloped in her eyes. While Luann went against her wishes not to prank her again, the said prank practically played child's play compared to what Luann would have normally dished out on April Fools. So she could say her word was toning things down, and yet Luann ended up receiving a beatdown that would have been warranted if she messed up with Luna's instruments for the lyrics she had kept to her songs that she had been working on. Luann didn't even break her previous acts to which it would have been replaced. That was Luna's own doing, and when she broke it over her sister's arms, not to mention breaking her nose when she chuckled at the bass drum at her. And to top it off, smashing Luann with the instruments wasn't enough for when the comedian, had a long stopped at laughing. No, she had to finish it with her bare hands. God even knows what could have done and become of Luann if Lenny hadn't stepped in when she did. And that hurt and painful, fearful expression was glued to Luna's mind like a flat-screen TV. It wouldn't go away no matter how many times you tried to change the channel. Luna's lip began to quiver as she realized that her father was right. She dealt with Luann for a punishment disproportionate to the pranks that befell her. But now her new roommate was never likely going to forgive her or remain distant for possibly all eternity. The musician wouldn't blame Luann if she even couldn't bear to look at her, and Luna herself would more likely punch her own reflection if she was even in the mirror in the room. The musician shut her eyes before bringing her hands to her face, the streams of hot tears leaking past her palms as her silent sobs filled the void in the otherwise quiet room. A few weeks after following April Fool's Day only yielded for a little improvement. Luann was no longer in a depressive state, but it was far from getting back to her cheerful self. Puns and jokes were almost foreign concept to her, and even Benny had issues trying to get her crack a smile. With Luna and her cycle ended as well as being into the first week in, she might as well even have been a para along her siblings. They would have more often not even to do any of these three, stay distant and worry, refuse to acknowledge her existence, or in this case of Len, acknowledge her with such hostility that no conversation could last more than 2 seconds. Lori was also informed of what occurred, and unlike the other sibling, she completely understood the situation. There were a few times Luann would drive her up the wall so much that she wanted to wring her neck, but she couldn't do that since the family had a child trying to have her have fun. Because of that, Lori was more disappointed than angry at Luann for her lack of self-control. However, she made it clear that Luna would need to make amends with Luann rather than let this matter fester into something worse. Taking her sister's advice, Luna decided that today was a better day than every day, especially with everyone else in and out of the house preoccupied by their own activities. After finishing her homework, Luna opened the door to the hallway. It was empty aside from Cliff, lounging in the stairs, just stirred from there, and Luna could hear the sounds of the TV. Focusing on the door she just crossed the hall, Luna could see Luann through the slight crack of the doorway. She was sitting at Lenny's desk, engrossed in her own set of homework, and as for the fashion herself, Luna was aware that she was currently at work. Giving a soft sigh, Luna took a few steps forward and wrapped her knuckles around the hard door. Luann? The comedy flinched a bit, directing her attention towards the door. Yeah? You got a sec? Her voice was a mix of pleading and hesitation. Luann remained silent for a moment. She hadn't spoken to Luna since April 1st, and she would have given her more than enough time to cool down. Although she was still a little wary, Luna hadn't tried to harm her ever since that day, and she did somewhat leave a warm smile during those few times they had acknowledged each other. But Luann didn't return her statements, and yet if Luna managed to finally work up the courage to speak to her, then Luann could at least do her courtesy of hearing her out. Yeah, Luann finally answered. Luna then pushed open the door what could be considered as a forced smile. So, have you been? Good, the comedian responded quickly, her pen wrapping tightly, tapping to the pen to calm down whatever anxiety was building up. So great, so what you up to? Luna started before her sister interrupted. Luna, Luann quickly turned a chair towards her. We both know you're here for something specific. You might as well go ahead and say it. The comedian spoke with a slight disdain, crossing her arms before patiently waiting for Luna to answer. The musician let out a sigh escape her. Alright, I know you probably still hate me for being on you 2 weeks back, and you probably think I didn't mean it when I apologized back then. She then sat on the bed. I didn't mean to hate you like that, Lou. You just caught me in the bad moment and I woke up sore down below, and you laughing and pranking me didn't help my mood at all one bit. I know I warned you about what happened if you ended up doing it, but now I end up repping you and so because of it. Luna pierced her lips together. But at the same time I still deserved it. I went down the way back out then, and I couldn't imagine what could have happened to you if Lenny didn't try to stop me. Luna had to take the moment to gather herself, not wanting Luann to see her crying, as she felt that she didn't deserve that kind of pity. Her light sniffles made it obvious that she was close enough. I know it's a long shot. She then cleared her throat, trying to have her voice sound like it's not broken. But I hope you could find it in your heart to forgive me. Luann wrapped her fingers around the length of her forearm, biting the knit cheek inside. Before a moment, she recollected her thoughts. I know I have a hard time trusting you, especially after you gave me that while you pinned me to the floor. Luna then looked at her, and Luann met her gaze. I woke up on the verge of wetting my bed twice because of that. I know you and our other sisters and brother didn't really like it when I pull a prank of any of you guys, but I didn't think that you would take it that far. I don't even think you realize how hard it was to even look at you as my sister. Luna then broke down the stair, and her gaze lowered to the floor in guilt. Luna gave a depressed sigh. I'm the one who started it all. I ignored all the warnings, and everyone gave me a push to you over the edge. So it was just as much as my fault as it was yours. The comedian got up from her chair and took a seat next to Luna. I know starting an apology before you started beating me to the floor, but as you might have guessed, that was because I got caught. Luna then glanced at her sister, who obviously twiddled her thumbs. I think it goes without saying that I messed up big time, thinking that I could get out of this scot-free. And to be honest, Luann then glanced at Luna. I don't really blame you for being angry. You told me what you were going through, but I took it as a challenge and I got just my desserts. I guess it's the good thing out of all this that it wasn't if you didn't beat me down with the fridge. Can't really have your cake to eat it, huh? Luna gave a slight nod. Guess not. So I'll forgive you for hurting me. Luann paused, laying a hand on Luna's shoulder, but only if you could forgive me for being an uncaring dunce. Luna then raised an eyebrow. So we start over? Well, yeah, I'm Luann. What's your name? The comedian smiled as she extended her hand. Luna gave a soft chuckle. That's the first joke you made in weeks. Yeah, I know. It was literally killing me to hold it in. Luann let out a neat laugh. If that was killing you, then it could have been the dead one, because the last time you went crazy, you couldn't tell a joke for an hour. Luna spoke in fits of giggles. Same to you, British accent, Luann added. The little giggle fest became a full-blown laughter before the girls promptly hugging each other, spending a few moments enjoying each other's warm embrace. Their sisterly bond may have been fractured, but at least it was never broken. Unlike all injuries, they just needed some time to rest and heal before becoming whole again. They didn't even notice the footsteps were approaching to the door, which turned out to be Lenny, as she just got home. She stopped upon the scene before her, fidgeting her urge to squeal in glee. Instead, she whipped her phone out and snapped a picture of the two of them. Opening her messaging app, the blonde loaded the image before sending it to Lori, with a couple of heart emojis, with the text portion of the message, "She'll totes love this."